This request kind of interested me because I never thought about that. I'm like, shit, I can definitely review. And I'll do one. I'll probably do more than one if people like this. Like I said, give this a like if you're into it. And I'll do, other controllers. I do have other game controllers I can do. So I have this beer here. I'm filming this Friday night. It's like a little after 10. I'm putting it up tomorrow, Saturday, but I had my friends over before. We were playing some GoldenEye on the Nintendo 64 multiplayer. And we were having some beers, so I am just drinking that. Anyway, this is an official N64 controller, official Nintendo controller. It's one of the see-through ones, so you can see the inside of it. You get a pretty long cable. It's probably a 6-foot cable or something like that. This controller historically would be considered one of the worst controllers out there. I wouldn't necessarily argue it. I can use it just fine. I'll talk about how I actually use it in a minute, but you're supposed to hold it like this, right? You'd be holding it like this. But it's strange to do that way because you have an empty button here. Or you could be holding. It's simple to hold like this if you're using the D-pad, right? But basis controller is. Look at the shape of it. It's a weird shape. It looks like a spaceship. Let's be honest. It's got a weird look. Nintendo was going into 3D, right? And they had analog control. So you have the joystick here right in the middle. You got a start button here. A, B buttons. And you got the C buttons here. Up, down. Left, right. You got the directional pad here. And the Z trigger underneath. In shooters and stuff, the Z trigger is what's firing. You also have this back piece here. I have a memory card in, so you'd be putting a memory card in here. Some games you need a memory card. And you can put a rumble pack in there as well. The rumble pack first came with Star Fox 64, I believe. It was packed in with it. Like I said, I don't hold the controller like this. I hold the controller like this. It's very hard to tell how I control it, but I hold it like this. So I usually use the thumbstick with 2 fingers. I would be using the trigger with this one. I can now use both shoulder buttons, and I'm using the C triggers with this button and A and B. That's how I always controlled it, like right out of the gate. Like I don't know if I ever actually used it like this. Like when I first used it, I was like, okay, this is how I'm going to use it. It just makes more sense to me because when you're holding it like this, how are you getting to that trigger? Realistically, you could do it this way as well. I wouldn't be surprised if maybe that's tough, kind of a little tough too, but that's how I would control it. I never had an issue with this controller. I thought it was fine in terms of how I was able to use it. It didn't frustrate me to use it, but the design on this thing is just, it's so weird. Like you look at the original PlayStation controller, the original even DualShock when they first added the thumbsticks in. So they had the 2. The C buttons are acting kind of as another thumbstick, right? In games like GoldenEye, you can use these 2 to strafe side to side, and these are going up and down. You point your gun up and down, stuff like that. In certain games, like I think Ocarina of Time, they would control, like certain items would be here, and then you'd hit this one, and then if you hit this, the item would go to like A or B or whatever. I think that's how it went. Like I said, it's been a while. They eventually, on the GameCube, this turned this into a C stick. I think these are the C buttons. It was a C stick at that point, so it was more almost like a camera as well, or a second thumbstick on the GameCube. But if you're just using analog controls with the shoulder buttons, directional pad with the shoulder buttons. As a normal controller, it actually has nice grips right here, and you use it like a normal controller. It's so weird. I mean, they could have realistically cut this out, came kind of down the middle, almost similar to the Dreamcast controller, which is another controller people don't like. I actually don't mind Dreamcast controller either. It's just a very odd design to me. They could have definitely did a little better with that. When you hold it the way I do, I feel like it works better. Like I said, it's fine for games though, when you're just using the directional pad. It's just a normal controller because this whole middle section's used. Even if you're just using the directional pad, you can still hit the trigger with this hand, the right hand. I could never play it like this. I just couldn't do it. Like I said, that one it has this for your accessories and shit. A lot of people don't like this controller. You know, it's just it's such a strange design. It really is. Like, this is Nintendo's. Like, I'm not gonna count the Wii Remote or the Wii U gamepad because those were specific to the system. The Wii Remote was made with motion controls. It was specific to certain games. Some games you just needed that thing and it actually worked fine, or you could flip it over and use it for side-scrolling games, like an old Nintendo controller, original Nintendo controller. Wii U gamepad actually isn't that bad of a controller, but you had the middle part for your map and shit like that. Like, it was integrated into it, so you'd be using it. Like, this was just standard. Their controller for a regular game system. You gotta remember, Nintendo honestly hasn't made a normal console since the GameCube. Even the Switch, it's a half. You play it on your thing. It's more of a handheld, actually, but you play it on your thing. But the controls are still strange. I mean, once you put them in the dock, the two, I don't use them with the dock usually, the little thing to make an actual controller, but this was supposed to just be a normal controller. Like, you're coming from the Super Nintendo controller to this. It's pretty nuts. Like, the PlayStation controller is superior to this. The DualShock is, but even the one that didn't have the analog control, just had the D-pad. It was the same thing as this, pretty much, except, you know, you're cutting out the middle. I didn't understand the design. I do understand. This is the perfect spot for the thumbstick, because they don't have two thumbsticks, right? You could have put it here. Yeah, but then, I mean, they had the D-pad in mind, so you had to throw it somewhere, right? The original Xbox did this better. It's more the shape that causes problems, because you literally have empty space here. Like the original Xbox controller. Because the DualShocks have pretty much looked extremely similar the whole way through. Sony doesn't really mess with the formula, right? Microsoft doesn't either too much, but like the original Xbox controller, it was set up differently, so you had a thumbstick here and then a thumbstick a little bit down, and then you had the D-pad underneath. The D-pad placement on the Xbox controller isn't fantastic, but it's much better than how this is, the placement on this. It's just an odd shape. Like, if I was giving this a score, I'd probably give it, like, for myself personally, I was able to use it just fine. I played plenty of Nintendo 64 games, and still do. I was actually playing some World Is Not Enough earlier. It works for me. But I have to now I have to use it differently than how they, you know, want it to be used. So I have to now alter how I play doing it. But I was able to do it. That's the thing with me in video game controls. I don't necessarily hate any controls because I will just make it work. I will figure out what's comfortable for me using the controller. But realistically, it's a 4 out of 10. Design is like a 2 out of 10. Alright? Design of the controller is. Functionality is not as bad. It's like a 6 out of 10. It works just fine. The look of it is just so... it literally looks like a spaceship. That looks like a Star Trek type spaceship. It does. Or a Star Wars or some shit, you know? It's better for when you're just using the D-pad. It's much better. It's a much easier controller to use. It's just a regular controller. You're not even paying attention to this, you know. But it's just not. It's just. I'm gonna go a little high. I'm gonna give this one a. I'm gonna go with a 5 out of 10, and I'm gonna base it on design and use. Like I was able to use it just fine, so I can sit here and say I use this. It's an 8 out of 10. The design is a fucking 2, 3 out of 10. You know. You know, this was great in the bag. It had a perfect spot to put a memory card or the rumble pack. It's not heavy. It's not lightweight. I mean, it's pretty lightweight. They came in a bunch of different colors. But this is one I got at a garage sale a couple of years ago for like $1. But it's just, I don't know. I think Nintendo would even admit this is probably their worst controller. I'm not going to count like the Virtual Boy shit or something, but because they could have just did like the Xbox controller and had the space filled in here and moved the D-pad down. They literally could have done. This was years before the Xbox came out. I don't know why they looked at it like this way. You could have. This empty space makes no sense to me. This should have been filled the fuck in, and this should have been moved elsewhere. But Nintendo's always doing weird shit, right? Them and Sega were always doing different stuff. Sometimes it hit, sometimes it missed. But they both did think outside the box for sure. But yeah, I'm gonna go a 5 out of 10 overall on this controller. I don't look at it as complete shit. I think the design is terrible. But I can use it just fine. That's the problem. But I did have to come up with my own way to using it. I'm sure other people use it this way. I think some of you have even commented you used it, you know, this same way. Or maybe they designed it with the fact that maybe people would use it different ways. They'd have different grips on it. Maybe that's how they designed it. But I'm just going to go 5 out of 10. Like, this is just not a great controller. The C buttons work, though. Like, when you're doing, especially in Bond, you're strafing and stuff, you're moving. The controller flows and works fine, but anyway, yeah. That's a gum chewing review of the Nintendo 64 controller. 5 out of 10 for me. Let me know what you guys think of this in the comments, how you thought, if you even used it, if you had it growing up, or you used it later on, you weren't too young to play or whatever, and you played it much later on, or you grew up with this. This was not, like, this could have been some people's first controller. Like, the first, that's why I'm looking at people who played the N64 right out of the gate. Like, it was their first system, their first experience with a controller, and right out of the gate, you're playing this. I mean, it probably helped you for later on. Controllers, you're probably like, holy shit, if I can use this, I can use anything, right? But yeah, let me know what you guys think of this controller if you used it. And give this video a like, and like I said, comment and whatever. And if you like this video, I will do other controller reviews. I like that request, so you know I can review the Wii Remote, the PS2 controller, PS4 controller, Xbox One controller. I can do the original Xbox controller I have. I got a GameCube controller I can do. What else do I have? I do actually technically have an original PlayStation controller because I have the one that came with the PS Mini. I have an original